Ruth here. So I'm going to tell you a traditional Eskimo story from the indigenous people in the Yukon, and this story is called The Origin of the Wind. I found it in a book called Treasury of Eskimo Tales, and it's compiled by Clara Bayliss. There once was a couple who lived in a small village in the Yukon. And this couple didn't have any children, which made the wife very, very sad. She told her husband that she had heard of this solitary tree that grew far, far out into the tundra, and that he could travel out to it and remove a piece of the wood and carve a doll. Well, the husband was pretty reticent about this because he didn't really want to travel out into the tundra, and he didn't really want to carve a doll, and he wasn't really that sad about not having a child. But the woman was insistent, and so the husband agreed to do this. So he walked out. He was walking out into the tundra, and as he's going along the path, the sun went down, and the stars came up, and the Milky Way lit a path for him to follow all the way to the tree. When he finally got to the tree, which was no short distance, he removed a piece of wood from it and put it in his pocket and turned around and walked home. When he got home, his wife was so excited. She said, "Okay, now carve a little doll and I'll make some clothes for you." So as the husband was carving the doll, he was whittling it with his knife. The wife was sewing clothing for it. She said, "I'll sew 2 sets of clothing, one for the doll to wear now and one in case those clothes get dirty." So that as the husband was carving, he carved out a little boy. The wife said, "This is great, we're going to have a little boy." Again, the husband was he wasn't really sure, but he's like, "I'll just do it for her sake." So he carved the doll, and she sewed the clothes, and when it was all finished, she said, "Now with the leftover wood, could you please carve some dishes so I can put some food in it?" And the husband was like, "Okay, I'll do it for you." So he carved some dishes, and she made some food, and she put them in the little dishes and put the doll at the table, at the head of the table, facing the doorway with a meal before it. The husband and wife went to bed, and they both fell asleep. In the middle of the night, the wife woke up to some rustling that she heard in the kitchen. And she shook her husband. "Wake up, wake up! I think the doll is alive." So the husband was like, "Okay, let's check it out then." But I think he was kind of a little bit unsure himself, but he was going along with it. So they walked out, and they found that all of the food that they had put out for the doll was gone. And not only that, but the doll's eyes were moving around. Oh my goodness. The wife was so excited that she had already invented in her head all of the things that they were going to do the next day. This was going to be awesome. It was like having a real child. So the husband and wife went back to sleep. And when they woke up the next morning, the doll was gone. They searched all over the house. They looked in every space they thought the doll could be, but it wasn't there. So finally, when they went outside, they noticed a tiny set of tracks that were going away from the house. Well, great. The doll's gone. So they followed the tracks, and when the sun came down and the stars came up, again the stars lit a path that led to the solitary tree. As they were walking out to the path, they realized the tracks disappeared. Because when the doll was walking out on the path and the sun started to go down, the doll noticed that as the sun was setting, it created a perfect path up into the sky. So, as he stopped and pondered this, he noticed to his side there was a big hole, a big porthole that was covered in skin like a lid. Yep. And he took his little knife that he had in his pocket and he cut open the hole, and a rush of wind came blowing up. And he thought, "This is great. This is exactly what this place needs. It's so quiet. There's no wind here." So he removed the whole skin, and a huge gush of wind came through. And he said, "Okay, the wind is great. I really love it. I like what you're doing here, but what I'm going to need you to do is sometimes you can blow really hard, and sometimes you can blow not super hard, and sometimes you don't need to blow at all. The people here on Earth, they like a little bit of variety. They don't want it to be super windy, and they don't want it to be not windy at all. So just kind of regulate that." And the wind did as the doll said. So they all walked up into the heavens, and as he was up, sitting above the earth, looking down, looking at everything, looking at the village and the tree and the tundra and everything around the Yukon, he noticed there's another porthole. Same thing with the animal skin covering it in a depression. So he cut the little hole open, and a gale came through. He was like, oh my gosh. Okay, same thing as the wind. Sometimes you can be really intense, sometimes a little less intense, and sometimes not at all. Okay? You got that? And the hole listened to him. He removed the skin and walked on by. So he kept walking, just kind of looking around, admiring things, when he notices another one. Another big porthole, covered in skin, with a depression in it. So this one, he cut a little hole in it, and a warm rain came out and was pouring all over him. And he thought, okay, this is really cool, but it's just the same as I told the other two. Sometimes you can be intense, sometimes maybe not as intense, and sometimes maybe not at all. Just kind of, regulate yourself. Then he goes walking along, just walking along. He comes to another porthole. Same exact deal. He cuts a little hole in the top, and what comes out is so cold and so intense that he is just like, okay, now that I don't know about this one. So he's kind of going a little ways, and just even that tiny bit is so intense that he's like, okay, I don't know. So he musters up enough courage to go back to the hole, and he removes the whole lid from it, the skin, just as he had done with the others. And as he's freezing, he comes up with this idea that, just like the other things, it was just as important. There needed to be cold, but if it was too cold, no one could survive. So he said, just like I told the other ones, sometimes intense, sometimes not as intense, and sometimes not at all. And actually, if you're going to be cold like this, let's just keep it to winter. At least that way people can anticipate it, and they know when it's going to be cold, and they don't have to worry about you all year long. So he talked to the wind, and he said, in the winter, if you could just push this cold, just in the winter, towards Earth, towards humans, we're going to be fine. So after he'd gotten everything sorted out, he walked back down to Earth and back to the village, where he explained everything that had happened and how he had determined how the weather was going to function. His foster parents were so excited to have him back that they raised him as their own child, and the story became a part of folklore as a result. The end.